Very interesting to see the opening argument by the initial manager, who also included a video. Tell me what we saw in that video and clearly what their tact is moving forward with this impeachment.
Well, what the impeachment managers are trying to communicate is that the language and rhetoric coming from President Trump weeks ahead of the January 6th insurrection, but certainly on that day, incited the behavior and actions and even words that came from so many of his supporters when they descended upon the U.S. Capitol, and that the president, former president, must be held accountable for those actions.
And what will the defense try and argue on their side?
Well, one of the arguments that the defense is making is that the president actually did not encourage that type of response, that he wanted protests to be peaceful and nonviolent. But they're also leaning heavily and mostly on the argument that a president cannot be impeached after leaving office. The reality is that President Trump was impeached while in office. What's happening at this point would be a conviction from the Senate. And most constitutional law scholars actually argue that there is no law saying that a president cannot be convicted for impeachment after leaving office.
Well, you know, I wondered that, Eugene, because the Democrats agreed to allow this impeachment trial, or this impeachment hearing, I should say, to take place after Donald Trump left office. And I'm fairly confident they wouldn't have agreed to it if they had felt it would be unconstitutional.
Absolutely. And if they also hadn't gotten the advice of constitutional law professors, and if many of those Democratic lawmakers hadn't studied law themselves. It's really important to remember to note that Trump was impeached before leaving the White House. This is just something that happened not because it couldn't happen earlier, but because most people in Congress, primarily Democrats, really wanted to focus on the inauguration of Joe Biden and make sure that the transition happened without distraction, considering just how difficult of a time we had getting to the place where a new president would be installed in the first place, in part because of Trump supporters violently attacking the U.S. Capitol. Yeah,
this is not a criminal proceeding, though. This is a political proceeding, as it were. And so do the Republican senators have the ability to use this loophole, as it were, to decide based on constitutional legality versus a moral authority, whether or not they want to move ahead?
Well, whether they can or not isn't perhaps the main reason for why they will actually vote. Most Republicans will not vote against Trump, and it's very possible that there might not be, even 5. And that's because Republican voters overwhelmingly are still on the side of President Trump. And when at least 10 Republicans in the House voted against Trump, we saw there was significant backlash to that. Almost all of those Republicans have a primary challenger at this point, and some have decided that perhaps maybe they just don't want to seek re-election. So Republicans in the Senate have learned that if they go against Trump, their political futures might be in jeopardy. And that perhaps is the reason beyond anything else, regardless of what the Constitution says, that will shape how they vote.
Sure. So in the brief time that I have left, Eugene, what is the point if the outcome is already known?
What Democrats are hoping to do is to put some type of punishment or disciplinary action in place that prevents future GOP or Democratic lawmakers from behaving in a way and speaking in a manner that incites violence. And they're hoping that Republicans can agree with them that that is something that needs to be done.
Eugene Scott is a political reporter and host of The Next 4 Years with The Washington Post. Appreciate your time, Eugene. Thank you.